It is 6 days of the search and rescue mission at the site of the George building collapse. Rescuers have been working through the night to excavate rubble and try to locate at least 40 people who are still unaccounted for. At least 14 people have passed away. Newzroom Afrika's Karinda Jagmohan joins us now, who is live on site. The death toll has now been revised down from 14. Please clarify for us, Karinda, first and foremost, you've been on the ground. Why are the numbers fluctuating? But most importantly, where are we now and what is the latest in this story?
Certainly, good morning to you. What we see often in sites of disaster like this calamity is that the numbers do fluctuate, and this is because of how information is being shared. There are a number of teams on the ground, and their information needs to go through a double verification process via forensic pathology services. So what happens when a body is retrieved here? That body ultimately is handed over to forensic pathology. So there's a retrieval process, and then forensic pathology has to receive. Various identification processes have to be undertaken. First, via fingerprints, which is the quickest method essentially. But for those who we are unable to identify via fingerprints, there's a DNA process, and that does take some time. But as that process happens, it is the forensic pathologist that then will inform that this person is part of those who had entered this building on Monday and had passed away, and that informs the numbers that we are given. So yesterday, when MEC Anton Budal from Western Cape Government said there were 14 people that had died here, he was receiving that information from officials on the ground who had just retrieved bodies. But there was a double verification process that needed to get underway that is still happening because it is an extensive and particular process ultimately, and those details must form part of investigations. So that is why it's critical to get those facts right. So that double verification process is still continuing throughout the night, and as that continues right now, officials have revised the death toll back down to 13 until they can officially confirm via forensic pathology services the number is 14. And so this does happen at sites of disasters. We also heard just earlier this week that the number of people who we knew were inside the building was first at 69, then we were told 75, and ultimately at this stage that number is now 81. And that happens because on Monday at 2 p.m. after the building collapsed, officials quickly raced to the scene, and they were told by bystanders that this is how many people were in the building. Then they were given some records and a list of people who had signed into the building. Then families came forward and said their loved ones were still missing. Their names were not on those records, and that is how the numbers keep changing. This always happens in such disasters, but one of the disaster management leaders in the Western Cape, Gerard Otto, just explained some of that process in a media briefing yesterday. Take a listen.
There are many questions in terms of the amount of people that was on the site. We requested the contractor that is busy at the site to provide us with the list of name of people that was on the site. The first list we got was 69 people. We said it can't be right because we realized that there should have been more in terms of what we saw on some other files. We then got to 75 people. We sat with the contractor again after retrieving a body that was not on the list. So we realized that there must be more people that we didn't account for. In addition to that, the families that we housed next door in the community hall indicated to us that they were waiting for people that was not on the list. So again we went back and we got the contractor, the subcontractors together, got the safety files, we worked through the safety files, and from that we established that approximately 81 people was on site.
So there you hear just some clarification on those numbers. In the meantime, on the ground, the search and rescue mission continues. And I'm joined by the Provincial Minister for Local Government in the Western Cape, Anton Budal. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Newzroom Afrika. This morning, as you come here and you look at the scene, tell me, where are we at in terms of the rescue? What have officials on the ground told you?
The official number, 13 people deceased. We're still looking for 40. The big machines, you can see it, but we work slowly, carefully. We've got spotters on the machines to look and to help the operator of the machine. And if they open up and there's a vacuum, then they must first send in the cameras, because even if it's a body, we must treat it with dignity. And if there's any sign of life, we still hope for a miracle, then obviously we need to get that person out safely. So it's a difficult process, it's a long process, but we will keep on going day and night till we got all 40 people out.
So I know it takes hours to dig through this concrete rubble. What's your message to those who might be criticizing what they say is the slow work here, saying that, oh, officials are stuck in meetings? What would you like to say to them?
We've got professionals on site. You work with human lives, you work with bodies. Now, the first hours of this operation, when there was a lot of sound, noises, you must then detect that sound. This is 3,000 tons of concrete. This kind of disaster never happened before in the Western Cape, I'm not aware of. The kind of slabbing and how the slabs collapsed. We had engineers on site, and as they work, the slab will start to move. Now, we also got the responsibility to protect the people on the site. We had 200 people working at the time on the site. Over this week, over 700 people. We had to manage that. So this is big machines, and those arms can kill anybody. So therefore, we need to be careful. I've congratulated our search and rescue people for just how they treat a body, with respect, with dignity, and they must keep on doing that. Yes, it's a long process. Yes, I understand the frustration of the families, because if your loved one is here, it must drive you crazy. But we've sit with undocumented people, we sit with people with no IDs. We struggle to identify the people. The police is busy with that process. We call in the embassies to come and help us from Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe. The 5 South Africans, the families, they get the necessary treatment. There's also a lot of good stories. The person with the cell phone, whose father was here all the time, and I gave him a hug and I said, sir, I can promise you we'll do everything to get him out alive. And we managed after 9 hours to rescue him. There was yesterday a person, his wife was the last one we saved, but his son is still in here. So there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of people that will need to get counseling, the rescue workers, etc. It's a big operation, and yes, from the outside it might look that sometimes we work slowly, but it's necessary to keep everybody safe.
It is absolutely necessary to look at what's happening here. Lastly, sir, could we see any plans of a memorial service or just some kind of gathering to honor those who have passed on?
Yeah, well, the focus is there here on site, and to get the 40 people out, there's talks to the municipality that at a certain stage, at the right time, they already had a kind of a service with the families waiting. But George needs it, a service, and already we've bounced it off the mayor, and we will talk again. I think everybody just wants to get over this phase, and then immediately we will talk to that. But the people of George is just wonderful, and I really think, and it's sad that we need a disaster to unite us, but the unity on the site, how people open up their houses, their hearts, the food here, it's incredible.
So we've seen it as well. Thank you so much for your time, sir. This is, of course, the Provincial Minister for Local Government in the Western Cape, MEC Anton Brudel, just speaking, and the question I raised with him is something we're seeing happen in terms of conversation, is looking at how this is unfolding, meaning questioning why it's apparently a slow progress, but it has to be a strategic process, because, Mr. Chaba, as you just look at the machinery on scene, you'll understand that it is also very dangerous for rescue services to go on site. But another aspect is that as this machinery goes on site, before it does so, they have to clear certain parts. They don't further impact the structure, the integral structure here. So that is very specific. At the start of the rescue mission, rescuers had to be so careful, because as they just even walked on the structure, they didn't want to put further pressure on the rubble that would ultimately add to those who were beneath this concrete. So that is why we are seeing these strategy meetings happen, to make sure that this matter is handled with dignity, and those bodies that are retrieved retrieved are done so in a dignified manner, because these are loved ones of those mothers and fathers that are in this community hall waiting. We hear they have received some sort of just a service for strength, and it seems that at this point the town of George will come together. We have seen that humanitarian effort happen actually for those that are on site, but even just outside, some of the public members saying that there are some churches just planning to get together. Sadly, I did speak to one representative of a hospital nearby, a worker there, who said that he's also suffering from trauma. A patient came in and they had to remove his leg, amputate his leg, because there were many challenges that the patient was facing. He had to amputate his leg, and sadly one person who was on a bed for a CT scan passed away just before they could actually have that scan. He passed away in the hospital. So these are some of the traumatic situations that are happening on the ground right now. But again, even because of how this process in a disaster like this one has happened, the numbers will fluctuate. And essentially what officials have said is patience and understanding, because they are doing their best to try and make sure that all of this is handled with dignity, but also with expertise, because all of this information has to form part of investigation and ultimately a court process that will be questioned, and so everything has to be done to a T. I'm going to give you hourly updates as we're here, and also speak to some members of the public that I do believe will soon be gathering here. As it is a weekend, they might be coming in just to pay their condolences or honor the memory of those who have passed away here.
Thank you so much, Karinda. You spoke of a double verification process. Do we know what that entails and why that is necessary, if just for the clarity of our viewers?
Certainly. The double verification process is one where we see that the bodies are essentially retrieved. So those who have passed, they're retrieved from the site by the rescuers or the emergency personnel. Once the body is retrieved, there's a process where it is handed over to forensic pathology services. And essentially the work of emergency personnel is to retrieve the body with dignity, to confirm that this person has passed on. And then once the handover happens, the forensic pathologist will start with an identification process that we just heard here, which in this case it is difficult because many perhaps don't have ID documents. Many were not on the forms that were submitted by some of the companies here in terms of who was in the building at that time. So only after a significant portion of that identification process has happened will forensic pathologists give a confirmed death toll to the officials here, and that number will then be handed down to the media. What we saw yesterday when MEC Brudel came is that the two bodies had just been found, and he came to us with that information. But strictly speaking, and in terms of an official number that will hold up in court, is what the forensic pathologist tells us. And so right now they say we're going to keep the number at 13 until we have all of our information essentially substantiated via a double verification process, which includes a significant part of identification. Sadly, in some cases, that identification may not be able to happen right now because DNA processes need to happen. And perhaps that's also what's just limiting the turnover of information. But that has to happen because it's understandable that the priority of officials is not to give numbers to the media, but to ensure that they are doing the work accurately to ensure that this case can hold up in various investigations. So that is what is happening now. I do understand that over the course of the day we might see this number rise as we have more formal identification processes having concluded, and so they'll give us those official numbers. And just later on maybe we might hear some words from Gerard Otto again just about that double verification process, but maybe this also just brings to light for all of us that is seeing disasters unfold as to how this has to happen on the ground in terms of the strategy undertaken. Again, a disaster, a calamity of this magnitude will see such events happen, and we've seen this in other disasters as well, where numbers do fluctuate, and sadly so, Mr. Chaba, only some time after this has happened will we actually get the solid numbers from officials, because right now as things stand on the ground, the main priority is to try and remove as much rubble as possible to find the 40 unaccounted for. And formally the number is at 40, but perhaps at this point some bodies have been recovered and are right now just with forensic pathology officers. And so, again, those numbers will continue fluctuating. But I'll be here to let you know what's happening live from the ground of this George building collapse site.
Thank you very much, Karinda. Before I let you go, I just have to say thank you very much for your meticulous reporting on this very sensitive matter. You are an absolute credit to your profession.